Turn with me to the book of Job. Don't know just how far I'll read in this. It'll probably be most more reading. I don't know. This just seems like this is the way the Lord's leading this morning. But our lives sometimes are full of questions, and we have a tendency to question the Lord about things. But I've always really enjoyed the Old Testament, because even in the Old Testament, the men of God experienced a lot of things, or a lot of acts as God was moving, and it's a lesson to us, and we find that it can be encouraging to us, especially when the trials came and the testing came, and these men stood in the days of evil then. You think that it was evil back then, it's more evil today, because I think there's more people who have turned away from the Lord and has turned more under the works of the devil. And the devil is strong. He's raging in these last days. He knows his time is about up. He don't have much longer to work, and he's doing everything he can to try to destroy Christianity. But you know, we can stand. We can make it if we set our minds to it. But let me just share a little bit about a man here that lived in the land of Uz. His name was Job. What kind of man was Job? Job was a man perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. And there was born unto him 7 sons, and he had 3 daughters. He has 10 children. His substance also was 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 she-asses, and a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the men of the east. And his sons went and feasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. And it was so, when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my sons have sinned, and cursed God in their hearts." Thus did Job continually. Now let's go back just here a minute. Job was what? Job was perfect, and he was upright. He feared God. So if you think that a man that walked upright did his very best to eschew evil, and he feared God, you know that he had to have a relationship with God in order for him to know that something wasn't right. There was something wrong going on in his sons' houses. And Job knew in his heart that his sons have sinned. He said, "It may be that my sons have sinned," and cursed God in their hearts. And thus did Job continually. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. See, it seems as if though every time we go before the Lord, who else do you think is there also? Satan. He's always exposing himself. Think about that. When the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, come to talk to the Lord, and that's capital L, capital O, capital R, and capital D. In other words, they come before God. Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord, and he said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. What was his purpose? Why was Satan walking to and fro in the earth and walking up and down in it? What was his mission? What was his purpose? He was looking to find souls, to find people that he could entice and to deceive and to try to get them to do wrong and to sin against God. But see, when he was walking to and fro, there was one maybe that he hadn't considered, and maybe he did. Because the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? Let me say something here. What can God say about you? What could God say about me? Let's look at this one-on-one. God knows who we are. He knows where we are. He knows our hearts. He knows our intentions. He knows our life. There's nothing hid that God doesn't know about. Right? So if the devil was to go before God, and could God say, Have you considered my servant so-and-so? Whether it's Aunt Mary or Susie or John or Bill or whatever, whatever name. Could God say, Have you considered my servant? And I'm sure that somewhere in the earth there are a very few, that if Satan was to present himself to God, could God say, Have you considered my servant John, or my servant Job, or my servant Susie, or my servant Mary? Have you considered them? It's something to think about, because it's up to us. It lies within us what we do. Well, no one's perfect. There wasn't but one perfect man, and that was Jesus Christ. Well, according to this, there was another man by the name of Job. And God said that he was perfect, that he was upright, and he feared God. We always have that negative part. Well, I can't. But Job did. Job was perfect and upright man, one that feared God and eschewed evil. And Satan answered the Lord when the Lord questioned him and said, Doeth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made a hedge about him and about his house and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thine hand now and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. God knows our hearts. God knows the depth that is within us, what is in our soul, what is in our spirit. not just in our fleshly mind and carnal mind, but in our spiritual mind. God knows. God knew this man. God knew Job. The devil said, "Put forth thy hand now and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face." But notice what the Lord said unto him. "Satan, behold, look, all that he hath is in thine power, and only upon himself put not forth thy hand." So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. And there was a day when his sons and his daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house, the oldest brother's house. And there came a messenger unto Job and said, "The oxen were plowing, and the asses feeding beside them, and the Sabeans fell upon them and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee." And while he was yet speaking, there came another and said, "The fire of God is fallen from heaven, and have burned up the sheep and the servants, and consumed them, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee." And while he was yet speaking, there came another and said, "The Chaldeans made out 3 bands, and fell upon the camels, and have carried them away, yea, and slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee." And while he was yet speaking, there came another and said, "Thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And behold, look, there came a great wind from the wilderness, and smote the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they died, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee." How much could a man take? Think about it. We complain a lot about things, but yet nothing like what Job faced. And I'm assuming this happened, it sounds like, all at one time. The oxen were plowing and feeding beside them. And then the Sabeans came and fell upon them. They took them away. And they slayed the servants. All but one, the one that escaped. And while he was yet speaking, here comes another one and says, "Hey, the fire of God's fallen from heaven and burned up the sheep." Can you imagine all these things that Job had is now instantly gone? From his oxen, his camels, his sheep, and now down to his children. Is all gone. Here's a man that walked upright before God, feared God, lived a perfect life. He eschewed evil. He shunned it. He turned away from evil when temptations come. What was his reaction? What would be our reaction? What is your reaction when the news comes? This has happened, and that's happened, and this has went down, and that's went down. The Bible says that Job arose and rent his mantle. He tore his mantle, he shaved his head, and he fell down upon the ground and worshipped. And said, "Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave me, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Can we, in all of our trials, can we, in all of our, let me say, bad situations, that the bad news that comes, and we've labored our whole life, and things have been taken away, can we still humble ourselves down and worship God? After all, Job realized that if it had not been for God, he would not have had any of this. And even when it was all taken away, there was one thing that Job honored more than anything else, and that was he still feared God and worshiped God.
Amen.
And he said, naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return hither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. And notice what he said, blessed be the name of the Lord. Hallelujah. Oh, glory to God. And listen to this. Everybody's looking for an excuse. Everybody's looking for a reason. I'm sure Job could have found hundreds of reasons to curse God and to turn from God. But did he? But in all of this, Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. See, a lot of people get angry at God when they lose, when things are taken away. They want to blame God.
No, but the devil's the one that does it.
But see, the devil is our enemy. The devil is the one that did all of this. But you have to understand that the devil could not touch Job until God gave him permission. God knew Job's heart. God knew Job and knew that even when everything that he had been blessed with had been taken away, that he would still serve him. And this is not a long message, but let me ask you, everything that God has blessed you with, and if it be taken away, would you still worship God? Would you still bow your knee before God and worship Him and praise Him? Or would you just turn away from Him and curse Him and blame God for what's happened? We need to realize that it's not God. We have an adversary. We have an enemy. We have the devil to contend with. But yet, if we're God's and we love Him with all our heart, soul, mind, body, and spirit, God knows. God knows if we're real. God knows if we're a pretender. God knew Job. And that's why He gave the devil permission to take all of this away from him, even though he'd been blessed. Job was put into a trial. Did he stand the test? Yes, he did. Because, see, there was another day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, From whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord again and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan the second time, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil, and still he holdeth fast his integrity, although he moveth me against him to destroy him without cause. And Satan answered the Lord and said, Skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life. But put forth thine hand now, and touch his bone, and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said to Satan, Behold, he is in thine hands, but save his life. In other words, the devil could do anything, but he couldn't take his life.
Amen.
The devil's out to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And sometimes we are tested and we are tried to see, really, are we true and are we going to stand? And even though we may go through a lot of things, we don't understand sometimes why people, good people, have to suffer and go through the things that they go through with. But there's one thing: the devil can't take their life. He can destroy the body, but he can't take the life.
Yes. You're not there to destroy the body.
So when Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord, he smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown, from the very bottom of his feet to the very top of his head. And Job took a potsherd to scrape himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. A piece of pottery, clay pottery, and scraped himself. Now he did have a wife, he had a companion, he had someone with him, but she said unto him, Dost thou still retain thine integrity? She questioned him. Even the ones closest to us sometimes will question us. Do you still retain your integrity? Do you still claim what you claim? And she said to him, Curse God and die. But you know what Job said? Could we say what Job said? Thou speakest as a foolish woman speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we receive evil? And in all this did not Job sin with his lips? Oh yeah, Job had some friends. He had 3 of them. When they heard of all this evil that come upon him, they came every one from his place. Eliphaz, the Temite, and the Bildad, the Shuhite, and Zophar, the Naamanite. For they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him and to comfort him. And when they lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept. And they rent every one his mantle and sprinkled dust upon their heads toward heaven. So they sat down with him upon the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and none spake a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was very great. And after this opened Job his mouth and cursed his day. And Job spake and said, Let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night which it was said, There is a man-child conceived. Let that day be darkened, let not God regard it from above, neither let the light shine upon it. Let darkness and the shadow of death stain it, let a cloud dwell upon it, let the blackness of the day terrify it. As for that night, let darkness seize upon it. Let it not be joined unto the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Lo, let that night be solitary. Let no joyful voice come therein. Let them curse it that curse the day, who are ready to raise up their mourning. Let the stars of the twilight thereof be dark, and let it look for a light, but have none, neither let it see the dawning of the day. Because it shut not up the doors of my mother's womb, nor did hide sorrow from mine eyes. Why died I not from the womb, Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Why did the knees prevent me, or why the breast that I should suck? For now should I have slain still and been quiet, I should have slept then had I been at rest. But with kings and counselors of the earth, which buildeth desolate places for themselves, or with princes that had gold, who filled their houses with silver, or as an hidden untimely birth, I had not been as infants which never saw light. There the wicked cease from troubling, and there is weary be at rest. And there the prisoners rest together, and they hear not the voice of the oppressor. The small and the great are there, and the servant is free from his master. Wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter soul, which long for death, but it cometh not, and dig for more than for hid treasures, which rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave. Why is the light given to a man whose way is hid, and whom God hath hedged him in? For my sighing cometh before I eat, and my roarings are poured out like the waters. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me. I was not in safety, neither had I rest, neither was I quiet, yet trouble came. And so his friends began to try to, I suppose, encourage Job, but what did Eliphaz, the Temite, say? If we essay to commune with thee, wilt thou be grieved? But who can withhold himself from speaking? Behold, who has instructed many? Thou hast strengthened the weak hands. Thy words have upholden him that was fallen, and thou hast strengthened the feeble knees. But now it come upon thee, and thou faintest. It touches thee, and thou art troubled. Is not this thy fear, thy confidence, thy hope, and thy uprightness of thy ways? Remember, I pray thee, whoever perished being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off? Even as I have seen, they that plow iniquity and sow wickedness reap the same. But the blast of God they perish, and by the breath of his nostrils they are consumed. The roaring of the lion and the voice of the fierce lion and the teeth of the young lions are broken. The old lion perished for the lack of prey, and the stout lion's whelps are scattered abroad. Now a thing was secretly brought to me, and mine ear received a little thereof. In thoughts from the visions of the night, when deep sleep falleth on men, fear came upon me, and trembling, which made all my bones to shake. Then a spirit passed before my face, and the hair of my flesh stood up. I stood still, but I could not discern the form thereof, and an image was before mine eyes. And there was silence, and I heard a voice say, Shall mortal man be more than just God? Shall a man be more than just his Maker? Behold, he put no trust in his servants, and his angels he charged with folly. How much less in them that dwell in the house of clay, whose foundation is in the dust, which are crushed before the moth. They are destroyed from the morning to the evening, and they perish forever without a regarding it. Doeth not their excellency which is in them go away, they die, even without wisdom. Call now, if there be any that will answer thee. And to which of the saints wilt thou turn? For wrath killeth the foolish man, and envy slayeth the silly one. I have seen the foolish taking root, but suddenly I crushed his habitation. His children are far from safety, and they are crushed in the gate, neither is there any to deliver them. Job really needed encouragement. It was just some of those good old friends that wanted to pass judgment. But Job always had an answer. And I'm not going to take time to go through that now. I may tonight at the evening service we'll pick up here, but I think I will stop right there for now. I pray that you will find some encouragement in what we have talked about this morning. I think everyone faces trials, temptations in this life, in which I know we do. But it's important to each one of us that we make sure that our roots are established, that we are rooted and grounded not only in the Word of God, but in the Spirit of God, that we have our hopes and our dreams and our lives planted and rooted in Jesus Christ. Without Him, we are nothing and we will have nothing. But with Him, we have everything. And even though the Lord blesses us with things here on earth, there will come a time that all these things will be taken away and we'll leave them all behind. But can we keep our integrity? Can we stand when our testing comes? May God richly bless you, and we'll pick this up at another time. God bless you. Brother Joe, would you dismiss us?
Father, we love you, Lord, and thank you for your word. We thank you for Job, Lord, who is an example unto us, O Lord, and help us, our Father God, in our trials, our tribulation. Give us patience, Lord, and let us learn how to love you and to serve you through all things, O Lord, our God. And the things that we suffer here will be nothing compared with the glory that will be revealed in us.
Yes,
Father, Lord God, when we stand before you and hear you say, well done, thou good and faithful servant, enter thou into the joys of thy Lord. And we praise you for the comfort of your word, for your promises, Lord. Yea and amen, Father. And we give you the glory and the honor in Jesus' mighty and holy name.
In the name of Jesus. Amen.